The Grifter is an alleged video that was first mentioned somewhere on 4chan's X image board. Watching it is to be said a soul-rending experience far more horrible than anything one could ever imagine. The image on the right is said to contain screenshots of some scenes in the video. In the few that I have watched are said to have been killed in their own homes, with the only thing in common is a strange doll hidden somewhere in their homes. There is a message at the end of the video constructed internal excluded language Esperanto, and it says, "The child, now a young man, is still alive and lives in a local shelter whose name was not given. He never spoke and is still catatone." Well, that was The Grifter, a creepypasta. My final thoughts on this story? Well, this definitely was pretty much a interesting creepypasta, but I never actually considered this one to be, a creepypasta. It was just too short. I mean, the concept of it, something being killed by, this doll. I mean, it doesn't go into detail on what doll actually did that to these kids or whatever. I mean, it doesn't explain who or what, but this story just doesn't make any sense. That's what, honestly, I can definitely say, is that this whole story just didn't make any sense. I mean, if it was a little longer, it would definitely explain more in the detail of what happened, but in this case, I don't even know what it was trying to do. It just kind of didn't really, it just left me, on a cliffhanger, and it kind of makes me wonder what actually went down and what actually happened, but the story doesn't really explain too much about it. It only give us some hints about it. That's just it. I honestly wish that this could have been a little bit more explained, but it could have been longer, so it would definitely explain a lot more. I honestly just don't know why that it didn't go, down the way it did, or why did it just fall flat. But in all due reality, this story could have been, an interesting concept, and it is somewhat interesting, but at the same time, I just wish that it could have been explained a bit better. And that's unfortunate because I was looking forward to thinking this story was going to be a pretty interesting one. I mean, the grammar was alright. I mean, for the most part. I was able to read this without any problems. I do wish it was a little longer to explain about what actually went down and could have gone into explanation as to what happened in that. But instead, this story decided to slap me in the face about it, and it just fell flat right then and there. And it's just one of the reasons why this story didn't really sit well with me, if that makes sense. Oh boy, there's a lot of things I could definitely say about this story. I mean, this story was not bad, but definitely not really the best ones I've seen this far. I mean, there's some stories that could have been, somewhat interesting and well done, but unfortunately, the story just fell flat. It just didn't explain things the way it should have, but it honestly could have been a lot better. Like, maybe more explanation or something, it would have been helpful, but instead, that's what we did not get with this story, and it honestly makes me feel like, what the actual earth am I sitting there and, reading? I mean, this is not a bad story, but I do wish it could have been better with some better explanations. Like, I mean, come on, people. I mean, with this story, it gave us only hints about what happened, but it doesn't really go into detail, and that's the only thing that really is frustrating about stories like that, is that they just give us hints about it. I mean, I can understand that it didn't really, if it was meant to be like somewhat of a get your own idea thing, but I think that's just what this story is. But, I mean, it just doesn't really work the greatest in this story. And that's the only thing I really have to say about it. It just didn't end well. Like, I mean, the ending kind of really gives me wonder if this man was actually still alive, Or where is he? Like, is he, like, in prison? Is he, like, does he have a wife and kids or something? I mean, it doesn't really explain what happened to the man. I mean, it gives us hints of what happened, but it doesn't really explain what actually went down with him and how is he alive or whatever. The story is just more confusing. And that's pretty much one of the only things I can definitely say is that this whole story, it's just confusing. And that's literally the one thing I can definitely say is that it's just really confusing. Now, I'm not trying to put this story down or anything. I'm just giving it my honest opinions. This story, it honestly was just confusing. That's one of the things I can say is that it's just confusing. And I'm just really confused right now about this. I mean, I really wish it could have explained a lot better as to what happened. Then that way the story would have been a lot easier for me to, gather information and understand what the hell actually went down. This honestly just doesn't really make sense to me. That's just, I don't know. My brain is just jumbled up in a puzzle. I just don't really understand why things happened the way it did. There's barely any explanation, but just some snippets. That's just it. I mean, one thing I'm going to say is that the story could have been, properly explained some things of why things went down the way it did. If it did properly explain it, that would have honestly helped the story out a lot better, but it honestly just didn't. Now, all I'm just going to say right now is that this is not a bad story. It's somewhat interesting and all, but it's just confusing. And that's just all I can really say is that this is just one of the most confusing stories I've ever narrated. But I have narrated some other stories that don't make sense. I'm not going to lie. I have narrated stories before that don't really make a whole lot of sense or just was made to not make sense, even to remote sit there and state that this story was not meant to make sense or anything. That's honestly what actually went down and all that. Anyways, I'm just going to say right now, I'm not going to give this story a rating. This is just going to be one of the stories that I just can't rate. I can't give it, any rating out of 10 because this is just confusing. Maybe in the future if someone maybe explains more about it or maybe someone can explain to me more information as to why this is confusing or maybe give a proper explanation as to why things happened in the story the way they did. If they give like a proper explanation, that would have honestly help out with the story, but I think but like I said, I'm not going to judge anybody who writes stuff that, pretty much just sits there and, makes it confusing. I'm just giving it my thoughts, okay? Alright, anyways, with that being said, I'm going to say, this is just simply my own personal opinion, and if you happen to disagree with me, that's fine too. We're all entitled to our own opinions in regards to these creepypastas. This is just simply my own personal thoughts. If you like this story, that's perfectly fine. If you don't like it, that's fine too. If you're just as confused as I am, I don't blame you. Anyways, I guess with that being said, and that being the case, what did you guys personally think of this story? Did you enjoy it? Did you not? Also, what we have done personally to help make this story a lot better? Feel free to let me know what your thoughts are down in the comments below. I'm the Lion Queen. I want to thank you so much for watching today's episode. And if you're new to my channel, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Ring the bell for notifications to when I upload, so that way you guys will not miss an upload. And as always, please roll the outro because I'm out and I'm going to go and get something to help with this headache because this story, honestly, it's just giving me a bit of a headache due to how confusing it is.